All right, today we're diving into something one writer is calling a political masterstroke, a really clever way to hide wealth right out in the open. So, how on earth is it done?
I mean, that is a pretty bold question, right? It sounds like the plot of a movie. But what if I told you the answer isn't some super complex scheme, but just a simple little change to a law? So, for this explainer, we're actually digging into an article from Pakistan's Dawn newspaper by Syed Sadat. And he's the one who uses that exact phrase, master stroke, to talk about a maneuver he thinks is designed to do exactly that. Okay, so first things first, we've got to unpack this so-called master stroke. And it all comes down to a really controversial new law. So here's what happened. In Pakistan, the National Assembly went and passed an amendment to the Elections Act of 2017. Now, on the surface, that might sound like a pretty boring routine update, right? But you know what they say? The devil is always in the details. So how does a routine update turn into what this author calls a perfect loophole? Well, let's break down exactly how this new law works. Okay, so at the very heart of this change is something called a confidentiality clause. And yeah, it does pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It gives parliamentarians a perfectly legal way to keep the public from seeing the details of their assets. And you won't believe how simple the process is. It's almost too simple. A lawmaker just asks for their assets to be kept secret. They claim there's a credible threat to their safety. The Speaker of the National Assembly or the Senate chairman gives it the okay, and that's it. Boom. The Election Commission is then legally bound to lock that information away from public view. The author from Dawn really sums it all up with this quote. He basically says, with this simple process now in place, it's game, set, and match for anyone with ill-gotten wealth. I mean, he's arguing the game is pretty much over for public transparency. But wait, the story gets even weirder. Because while all this was happening, something completely different, like the total opposite, was going on with another group of public officials. And this is where you see a really striking contrast. Yeah, so just as parliamentarians are getting these brand new tools to hide their information, another group, civil servants, are being forced to do the exact opposite. They're being pushed toward total radical transparency. And this, right here, sets up a pretty wild double standard. And here's where you can see that contradiction laid out clear as day. On one hand, you've got parliamentarians who can ask for their details to be kept secret just by saying there's a credible threat. But on the other hand, you have civil servants who must put all their assets out there for everyone to see. The justification? To discourage corruption and meet conditions for an IMF loan. So yeah, totally different rules for two groups who are both supposed to be public servants. So what does this all mean in the real world? What's the fallout from this paradox? Well, this is where we get to the absolute heart of the author's critique, the complete breakdown of accountability. The author's whole critique really boils down to this one simple number: 0. That's how much moral authority he thinks Parliament has left to demand transparency from anyone else. I mean, think about it. If you create a rule to exempt yourself from scrutiny, how can you possibly turn around and hold anyone else accountable? And this quote from the article, wow, it really gets to the core of the whole thing. The author is suggesting this isn't just about some clever legal loophole. No, it's about a fundamental mindset. This belief that the people who make the laws are somehow above the law themselves. And that whole justification they use, the credible threat thing, the author points out that this is a classic move, a really common tactic used in Pakistan. He's arguing that it's not really about genuine security most of the time. It's just a super convenient excuse to shut down questions and dodge any real accountability. The author actually uses a specific Urdu phrase to talk about all those transparency rules being forced on the civil servants, for the IMF and others. It's file ka pet bharna. And what that means, literally, is to stuff the file. It's this idea of just creating mountains of paperwork, making a bunch of laws that look like you're reforming, but you have absolutely no real intention of changing a thing. It's all for show. And all of this brings us to the author's final thoughts on the whole affair. His conclusion is that, look, this isn't some brand new crisis. It's just an old, familiar game that's being played all over again. He actually ends his article with this really poignant couplet from the poet Afzal Khan. It goes, "You keep it simple, making the same move again. We are naive to fall for it over and over again." It's such a cynical, almost tired observation, isn't it? The idea that the same political moves get played out again and again, and somehow the public just keeps falling for them. And that really brings us to the final big question that the article leaves us with. Why do people fall for the same move again and again, just like the poet said? Is it that we're just not aware? Or maybe a feeling of being powerless? Or is it something else completely? It's a question that goes way beyond this one law in this one country, and it's definitely something worth thinking about.